Thank you, choir. And thank you, all of you that helped us with the flags coming in. Was that nice? And thank you, Tom Nesland and Jerry Bowron. It's just part of the fun of this church, is the diversity in it, and I just celebrate it. Sat around the campfire in Mexico this week and just looked at all the group, all different ages. We had 20-somethings and 30-somethings, and then a group of us 60-somethings mixing cement together. It's just a great thing. So we love that about our church. If you weren't here earlier, just make sure you know next weekend, Friday night, we have Good Friday service, 7:30. Sabbath morning, 9:30 upstairs, first service. Second service will be 11 o'clock here. And drama and music will be a wonderful, then a white tablecloth banquet upstairs. I read a story this week. A young doctor, 32, 33, had been a infectious disease specialist, had been over in Africa, just kind of an average young doctor getting his career started. Went over to Africa and did some experience. He's come back to America, then New York City, just getting a little practice started, had almost no patients, looking at the phone to ring. Wife and two little boys, when the phone rang, and a lady said, "Are you an infectious disease specialist? Have you been in Africa? Can you do this? Do you know anything about viral hemorrhagic fever?" And she said, "I have a patient who is a Nobel Prize winner who is dying, who needs your help." Can you guess who it was? Mother Teresa. And he said, "I'd like you to talk to the doctors." They put him on the phone with the doctors in India. She was in Calcutta. She had an infection. She was going steadily downhill. She's 79 years old. The whole country is waiting, watching, hoping that she will not die, praying. And they want him. He talked to them for an hour. 20 minutes later, they call him again and said, "They want you to be in Calcutta tomorrow." So I just found my passport in the box says it's expired. No problem. That's a minor detail. Be ready 7 o'clock in the morning in front of your apartment. He was on the street at 7 o'clock in the morning. They took him to Rockefeller Center on Sunday morning, and he took some pictures. 15 minutes later, handed him a brand new passport Sunday morning. They drove him to the India consulate Sunday morning. Every officer was there in full uniform and handed him a visa. And he said, "The whole world is watching and waiting for you." And he realized the load that was on him. They picked him up at his apartment with a suitcase at 11 o'clock. He got in the car to go to the airport. There were 5 nuns in the back. And he said, "Where are they going?" Each one of them had little gifts to give to their sisters of charity. I've been to Mother Teresa's house in Calcutta. They were giving gifts for him to take. And she said, "We do not actually have a ticket for you on the Concorde to India. They are going to go up or down the passenger list in the waiting room and ask that one of them give up their ticket so you can go help Mother Teresa." And so it was interesting. So he stood off to the side and he watched these 5 nuns, sisters of charity, go to the first businessman in line and say, "We need this doctor to go. Our Mother Teresa is dying. Would you give up your ticket?" "No, I can't. I've got to go." But finally, after a few minutes, those sisters had shamed someone, handed her the ticket, and they came over grinning with the ticket. And he says, "You sisters are wicked. I'm going to tell Mother Teresa about you." They just grinned. They were so proud. And he got on a plane and he flew 24 hours to Calcutta. He walked through 5,000 people outside the hospital. And he helped her, and they figured out what was wrong. The Pope sent his doctor, cardiologist, and there was a battle. The Pope's doctor said, "It is malaria, that has to be it." He says, "No, it's an infection with her pacemaker." 32 years old, no practice really to speak of. And after the meeting, the doctors chose him, Dr. Lombardi. And he had to go in and do surgery and take out the pacemaker, find the wire, and he was right. And she immediately began to be better. And she lived 8 more years, and he was her doctor for 8 more years. Went over and over again and became the doctor to the Sisters of Charity. That was his moment. You never know when your moment's going to come. The phone call comes out of clear blue, and all of a sudden, you are now to step up, and your time has come, and your moment is here to shine and to do something, and the glory of the world comes upon you. And maybe some of you have wondered, where is my moment? Where am I going to be? Not just one more person, one part of a crowd of 4 million people in Orange County, or the 300 million or 8 billion people in the world. When is my moment going to come? When I matter, when my name will matter, and I will do something that will take care of a Mother Teresa. I will make a difference in the world. Where is my time? See? And I wanted to bring a message based upon an old book. Hilda and I are C.S. Lewis people. We really began to date around C.S. Lewis. We went to Europe many years ago, and we spent an afternoon, found his house in London, in Oxford. And we have read most of what he's written. When Hilda and I were dating and falling in love, she gave me this book. Read it across the country to New Orleans General Conference, called The Weight of Glory. And after I Have a Dream and Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, The Weight of Glory may be one of the top few most famous sermons ever in America, maybe around the world, that he gave in 1941 in a war at the Oxford Cathedral, invited to speak for Evensong, not a pastor, as a professor of English. And just a great, famous sermon that I just think you need to know the main idea. So I'm not going to read his sermon. I'm going to add my own way of doing it and interpret his language. It's 70 years old. But it has an idea that I think everyone should know. I found it online late last night, and so I printed off a few copies. If you'd like to read it, you can take a copy home with you and read it a little further. One of C.S. Lewis's main ideas that he's famous for, not just in this book, but it's in this particular chapter, is The Weight of Glory. He tries to describe this longing. It is really what convinced C.S. Lewis to go from an atheist to becoming a Christian. This sense of longing that we all have. The nostalgia for a special time when we were growing up. A happy place, a vacation place, or some place. For him, of course, was the wardrobe, the Chronicles of Narnia. And we all dream of retiring and of having vacations and going to that happy place. We want to hold on to that happy place where everything was peaceful, where everybody was loving, and it was all magical. And we want that back. And that's our heaven. And he wrestles in this sermon with the idea, is it wrong for us to have this longing for mansions and for travel and for food and pleasure and our family and all these Disneyland parts of heaven? Is it wrong for us to be motivated by that? Or can you only have to be motivated by Jesus? A famous pastor in the Adventist church used to go around saying, if you want to go to heaven for any other reason than simply to be with Jesus, you won't be in heaven. But C.S. Lewis says, look at all these descriptions. That the Bible is full of descriptions of all these pleasures that we're going to have in heaven. It expects us to be motivated by these pleasures that are there. And then it says in a famous quote that we'll put up here on the screen, the problem is not that we desire it too much, but that we long for heaven too little. Our Lord finds our desires not too strong, but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition, when infinite joy is offered us, like an ignorant child who wants to go on making mud pies in a slum, because he cannot imagine the offer of a holiday at the sea. We are far too easily pleased. One of the top famous quotes, C.S. Lewis. Even though these things are fun and pleasure, he is not saying pleasure is wrong or that it's wrong to have a house or to have a lot of money or to have a BMW or to have the pleasures of our world. But he just says, understand that these are mud pies compared to the seashore that God has prepared for us. And it is not wrong to long for what God has prepared. You think about the book and the movie Unbroken, 47 days out on the ocean, where Louis Zamperini is out there. And he talked about, like all people going through these things, just sat there imagining cooking dishes of food, going all the ingredients, just sitting there imagining, so hungry for something to eat. I get to go to Hanoi late in May, and I'm going to go to John McCain and their prison camp, where they just spend 6-7 years imagining coming back and eating food, that longing. And that's what we long for. All the longings we have down here that we think are longings really for food or for whatever are really part of the deeper longing for God and for heaven and what He has prepared. People have bucket lists of what they would like to do. We have friends whose parents are rich, and they took them over down to Peru, and they did a hike up to Machu Picchu. And people come along and take care of you, and they pitch your tents, and they give you food, and it's gourmet food. You just hike along in the scenery. I just said, boy, I'd like to do that in my life sometime. I'd like to have that chance. But then he told me when they were camping at 13,000 feet, their son, 13 years old, was in another tent, and he got sick in the middle of the night and wanted to be with his parents, and he came over and unzipped the tent, and he said, come on in, and he walked in, and he threw up all over them. And so that's the problem with these dreams that we think are our ideal dream. Another year they went to Switzerland and they did the hike, the tour, famous tour around Mont Blanc. We have friends who did the $14,000 this year, the Viking River cruises. We're going to go this summer. Hilda's Dutch, we're going to take the boys, and before they leave our house completely, take them to their Dutch family and see them and see their heritage. You can see the same things on pictures. You can have a picture of the Eiffel Tower and a picture of the D-Day beaches that we're going to and a picture of the windmills. And I can show you the pictures, and people say, why spend all that money to go see it? Because somehow it is just not the same. I've been to the Taj Mahal. It is not the same as the pictures or Victoria Falls or the other great places of the world. And God would say, you can try to just think that you have heaven here with your little pleasures. You have seen nothing yet. Eye has not seen nor ear heard what God has prepared. Amen? 15. One of our church members has a Corvette. I was driving behind him and following his Corvette. I said, boy, I'd like to have a Corvette like that. And I kept following him, and he's our church member. I did their wedding. I said, could I just ride with you one time? It's an old Corvette. We all have bucket lists, but they're all just mud pies compared to the seashore that's coming someday. None of those things are ever going to satisfy you. You were made for God, and you were made for heaven. And the longing you feel for all these pleasures is really a longing for God. C.S. Lewis goes several pages on that. But now he gets to this theme of glory. He says there are 5 things that the Bible seems to be indicating of what this heaven is going to be like. Number 1, you will be with Christ. Maybe that's all that matters on the list. Number 2, you will be like Him. And number 3 is this idea that somehow we are going to receive glory, whatever that means. Number 4, we're going to eat, we're going to be fed, there's going to be a banquet, there's going to be pleasures, we're going to have programs and performances. And number 5, somehow we are going to be judging people, reigning, judging, answering questions. Those are the 5. And the one he wants to spend the most time on is this idea of glory. What does the Bible mean that someday we're going to have glory, receive glory? And he said the 2 ideas that most of us think of, one is fame and the other one is sort of yellow glow. And he says, who wants to be a human light bulb anyway? Max Lucado, in his book on the Second Coming, has this idea of this fame, glory. He said, I was at St. Louis when Mark McGwire hit his, I think, 70th home run to get the record. And all of a sudden, everyone is there. The stadium is full. 60,000 people are cheering his name as he hits the home run, and they go running around the bases. And he wondered what that would be like to have 60,000 people calling out your name and cheering you, and you're the best in the world at this thing. And most of us never get to experience that. But he says someday when we walk in the gates of heaven, we're going to feel that. You may never have 60,000 people cheering for you down here. You may never get the phone call to go be the doctor for Mother Teresa. You may never have any building named for you or a bridge named for you. You may never have the big house or a fancy car or any of those things. But he said someday we're going to walk through the gates of heaven, an angel is going to pronounce your name, and all of heaven will cheer for you. There will be fame. Is that the glory? But he says, no, that's really not the glory that Jesus is talking about here. The glory here is the approval of God. In the same way that when the Father gave glory to Jesus, he said, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. That's the glory that we're going to have when we walk in the gates. There's someone who wrote, it's really not that important what God thinks of you. What's really as important is what you think of God. And C.S. Lewis just goes crazy with that. He says, no, that is not the most important thing, what you think about God. The most important thing is what God thinks of you. And that's going to be this glory. That is what you are hungry for. That is what you are looking for. In all of our searching and all of our world today for pleasure, we really are looking for this final, ultimate approval from God when he says, well done, thou good and faithful servant. The weight of glory. Glory. We're all trained to throw away compliments. Have to be humble. Someone said something nice that you've done. No. It was nothing. It was all God. I didn't really do that much. It didn't really matter. It wasn't that big a deal. You shouldn't have given that to me. You spent too much money. We shuck it all off because it's wrong to just have pleasure in someone giving you a compliment and giving you glory. But then Sue says, I realized a child hasn't put up any of those defenses. No one told the child that they have to be humble anymore. And when they have someone that matters to them, just glow over them. A child like that, that's what God wants us to be. And that's what we are waiting for, is glory from the Father. When the Father says, well done, welcome home. It's glory. You think about those times when someone has complimented you and it got inside your soul. Pastors get plenty of criticism along the way, but we also get some compliments over time. And I thought about different ones that have gotten through. I remember one time that I was asked to speak to all the pastors in Illinois. And when I gave my little talk and I was on my way to my seat, the conference president whispered, just right, just right, just right. Standing in front of 1,000 people at the women's ordination, scared to death for my career. And all of a sudden, there's a standing ovation. To go to Africa and have them give you an honorary degree. I thought this was going to be no big deal. I just raised some money for them. But it's amazing how good that felt. And you think we shouldn't do that. Even Jesus needed to hear the voice of the Father when he comes out of the water saying, this is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased. We're told that even the angels had to come to Jesus when Satan was there, all the demons to get him away from the cross. Angels had to come down and encourage him, to tell him the Father was happy, the Father was pleased, he was on the right track, he was going to save the whole world and the universe. And the moment he rose from the grave, he did not want to spend any time with anybody. No one worshiped. He wanted to go to the Father and receive glory from the Father and know that what he had done was meaningful and the Father accepted it. Even Jesus needed to hear it. We're all hungry for this. And the night before Jesus died, Jesus prays the famous prayer of John 17. And he says now in verse 22, I have given them the glory you have given to me. And Jesus passes on to us The same message that the Father gave to him, this is my beloved Son, he says to you and me, this is my beloved Son, this is my beloved daughter, in whom I am well pleased. And there will be a time where we will just revel in that glory from God. Glory. When we stand before the judgment seat of God someday, you will hear one of two things. One message will be from Matthew 25 and the story of the 10 virgins. I don't know you. I never knew you. Depart from me. The other group will hear, well done, a good and faithful servant. Come on in. Welcome home. And C.S. Lewis describes it with one of the famous paragraphs. Weight of Glory, page 15. We can be left utterly and absolutely outside, repelled, exiled, estranged, finally and unspeakably ignored. On the other hand, we can be called in, welcomed, received, and acknowledged. And we walk every day on the razor edge between those two incredible possibilities. And then maybe one of the most famous quotes he's ever given. At present, we are on the outside of the world, the wrong side of the door. But all the leaves of the New Testament are rustling with the rumor that it will not always be so. Someday, God willing, we shall get in. Imagine preaching this in World War II. 1,000 people in a cathedral. Someday we're going to get in. We were golfing with some friends here, my boys and I, one of the church members. The golf course down by the ocean down here. And all of a sudden, I hit a very bad shot. And I went soaring into the sky, and it went over to one of the mansions next to the golf course. And it smashed into a window of one of the mansions. And the guy who plays there regularly said, "Are you crazy? You just broke a window at Magic Johnson's house." What would you have done? So I walked up to the back of the house, knocked on a door, and sure enough, here came Magic Johnson. And he brought me inside. I said, "I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. I just hit your window, and I'm glad to pay for it." Magic says, "Don't worry about a window. I am a billionaire. Don't worry about the window. Come on in." And he took me into the house, and he said, "Can I get you something to drink?" Got me something to drink, and brought out a couple jerseys for my son, so signed by Magic Johnson. And it worked out very nice. No, I did not hit a ball to Magic Johnson's house. Magic Johnson didn't, they did tell me that was Magic Johnson's house. He did not come to the door. He did not invite me in. He did not give me jerseys. He doesn't care who I am. He doesn't know who I am. I am nothing to Magic Johnson. You understand? But someday I will be something to the God of this universe. And even though we have broken a lot of windows, He will come to the door and welcome us in. He'll pay for all of it. And we will go from outside to inside. And we will hear glory. And we please God. It will be emotionally we've been looking for all our lives. Every time we've been looking for approval. Every time we wanted to graduate with a degree. Every time we wanted to be somebody. Every time we wanted someone to hear our story. Every time we wanted to amount to something in the world. It was what we were really hungry for, was to hear the approval of our God. The one who made us, who someday will walk us into heaven and will give us glory. That is this weight of glory that we're hungry for. See? And today we only hear it from God filtered through thousands and millions of miles. And we hear it through a very disappointing church, and through people and with eyes that cannot see and ears that cannot hear and a mind too stupid to really hear the voice and love and heart of God. But someday all those filters will be gone. And he says we will walk into heaven and we will go and we will drink from the fountainhead and we will drink joy from the fountain of joy. See? Without any filters anymore. And now at the end of the chapter, this famous sermon, he makes a left turn that you just don't know is coming. It's all about the glory we will receive from the Father. And then he says this. He said, it's possible that if we're not careful, that would become too important to us. And we could take that too far, our hunger for this approval and glory from God. But he says, I found one practical application of this idea. The one group that we cannot take it too far is our neighbor. And he said, you and I have this weight of glory, is to bring the glory of God to the people around us. He said, all the people who are around you are not ordinary people. All the people around you, they may look ordinary and just regular people, but they are all potential gods and goddesses who someday you would be tempted to bow down and worship when they receive their glory. And that is this weight of glory. Let me read the famous quote to you, page 18. The load or weight or burden of my neighbor's glory should be laid on my back, a load so heavy that only humility can carry it. It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature, if you say it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship, or else a horror in a nightmare. All day long we are in some degree helping each other to one or other of these destinations. There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. And so all around you, you have people that it is your weight of glory is to help them move in this direction or the other. Your privilege and honor and glory is to bring them the glory of God and help them become what God has called them to be, their glory. Or what you say and do could take them the other direction. That is our weight of glory. You never know the ordinary people around you, what they could be if they were to fully hear the glory of God. I thought of different people in my life. You have yours. These are mine. Just a few that I thought about. You can baptize 1,000 people in a baptism in the Philippines. You never know. One of these kids will someday. We did a crusade in a place called Dumaguete. My translator had no job, couldn't finish his degree. Nice guy. And my group said, Pastor Dan, we should help him get into ministry. We raised money. We sent money for his salary for 3 years. Became the top soul winner of that mission. They called him to our college. He's been a college teacher for the last 15 years. Is a major professor at Mountain View College. Told me he used to go through the shower when he was a responsible student in college and scrape together pieces of soap to make a bar of soap. Now a professor. Young man named Sam, someone told me we needed a youth pastor. He said, call this kid. He worked for summer camp back in the Carolina Conference. I never heard of him, never met him, knew nothing. Fought for him, interviewed him on the phone. He's been the chaplain of La Sierra University for the last 15 years. He's the best there is. I keep telling him that that's the only thing I ever did in my life was to take this kid and give him this chance. He is phenomenal, Sam Lenore. You never know, some kid, and you give him a chance. Young man was in Ghana, Africa. Teacher, pastor, someone from La Sierra took an interest in him and said, I think you ought to come to La Sierra and take a degree. They thought he would forget all about it. He didn't forget. He sent over by email an application form. He filled it out, sold everything he had, came over to La Sierra. He had nothing. He and his family, 2 kids, sleeping on the floor in an apartment behind the church. Came to Sabbath school. They had all the visitors stand up. Someone went over afterwards and said, why don't you come to our house for dinner? so impressed, began to sponsor him through his education, went back over after he got his degree. We took over the presidency of our small little tiny college there, and in the next 20 years took it from 300 students to 2,500. A great man. I have done the week of prayer there as one of the greatest human beings I have ever met. Just a guy. And someone says, I'm going to gamble on you. You never know. That's the weight of glory we feel around us. So we have a video of all of our people. Do you have a video ready to go up there? Here's all of you. Many of you. Is that good? Thank you, Sonny, and all my photographers, Maggie, everybody. And I've got 2 or 3 more on our slideshow that came afterwards, after we already closed that up. Do you have those real quick? Just 2 or 3. There's Maggie, Sylvia, transferring into our church. A bunch of the kids at the river trip sent that to me yesterday. These are just your people around you. And you never know which one of those people will add something to your life. And if you give a little weight of glory to them, what they will become. And we just took these last 3 weeks, to try to say to you all, stretch beyond the circle that you have. Sit somewhere else in church. I know where you sit. I can look, and there you are. Try another place and get to know that particular circle once in a while. When you go to the potluck, don't sit with the same group of people that you sit with every single week. Go out to dinner with the very same. Stretch out a little. Try another kind of color. Other people, other ages. Try old and young. Try some others. And ask their question, how did you become an Adventist? What are you doing? Be curious about life and watch people add life to you. And move beyond the little boundaries that we have together. Just walk across the room. Some of my favorite stories for this. I love the story about the 2 people that came in first and second in a ski race one time in the Olympics. A fraction of an inch after 50 kilometers. It was so close as to be nothing. They had many cameras trying to decide. And the gold medal winner got the silver medal. He went down to the store and they broke the 2 apart. And they melded the gold and the silver together for both of them, so both of them would be equal and be one together. That's what we do in life. All be together. I could tell you many more stories. It's time to be done. I was in Israel. We had a bus of people going through Israel and Palestine. We had a Jewish tour guide. And there was the wall. You know all these walls that we have. We have the wall in Mexico. We saw this last week. There was the Berlin Wall. Germans here, Germans there. Same family, same people. Reagan shouts out to Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And you all remember the night where the Berlin Wall came down and the Iron Curtain came away. We're sitting on a bus with 50 of my church members and pastors. And this Jewish tour guide talks about the wall. and how that has cut terrorism down by 75% and all that. Here's a wall that splits families and people's farms on two sides. There's a wall through your city. And then someone asked Dr. Garrity, our president de La Sierra, what do you think about the wall? And I knew Dr. Garrity has been doing archaeology in Palestine and Jordan for 40 years. He tilts towards the Palestinians. He feels them deeply. Now what's he going to say to a Jewish tour guide? What do you do with this wall? And this man, without any time to think about it, he said, I understand why sometimes people think they need a wall. But isn't it too bad every time we have to have a wall? I said, how did he come up with that? I understand why we have to have a wall in Mexico, but isn't it too bad that people have to be on one side and one side, cannot walk across and be with each other and go build churches and houses and help each other? Isn't it too bad? And Ephesians 2 says, Christ is our peace, and he has broken down the dividing wall that divides us. We don't have any more walls. I'm proud to have part of the history of breaking down a wall between male and female. The Bible says, no more Jew or Greek, male or female, rich or poor, slave or free. We are all one in Jesus Christ. I have sent you today by email a unity statement you can sign if you want on the computer. Thousands have already signed to have a petition to the General Conference session this summer asking for the freedom of every division to have equality where we want and take down the dividing walls. Because Jesus wants us to just go beyond and carry the weight of glory for all the people around us. It's our dream that our church would be a wonderful model of the weight of glory, where we would not have the barriers of gender or color or politics or age, where people just love and take down all the walls that humans put up. Amen? That's the weight of glory. Come and sing your last song.